So this is the last of our 4 words. This is not just a single word. This is destined to make it. We started with awake, and then what was it? Stable, and then secure. So we are awake, stable, and secure. And then this part is to do with really sure that we will get there. And Baba speaks about firm, determined thought. You know this expression, Dridha Sankalp. And this is a very interesting practice, firm, determined thought. And there was Avyakta Murli, which was only on that quite some time ago, maybe around 1997, 1998, somewhere in there. And it is really very powerful when you take one of these words or expressions and you actually do the thing that Baba says you have to do around a particular thing that you want to accomplish. And one of the things that you need to be firm and determined about is when there is any situation that wants to constrain or constrict or limit you in some way. And one of the 5 vices that is there is called attachment. And so everybody has, to some extent, all of these. But attachment is, if you have a handcuff on your one hand and on the other hand is to somebody else, you're attached to them, they're attached to you. And either way, it's not, attachment is not a one-sided thing, it's a two-sided thing. And you can be attached to people, you can be attached to preconceptions. And once you see that you're in bondage and you think, I want to be free, then you need to use this firm, determined thought to get free. And it could also be a habit, an addiction of some sort. And this is connected with willpower. And in fact, if you know anything about addiction recovery, one of the things that they say about an addiction is it's a disease of the will. And it is said for an addict who's addicted to a substance that all you have to do is just say no. But think about it in everyday life where you're not actually a classified drug addict or something like this, but that there are things that you don't say no to, but you feel like saying no to, but you say yes. Because the other people are more determined to make you do it than you are to not do it. And usually you go along with it to avoid the problem of forcing them to back down. And most of the time it has to do with someone putting more food on your plate than you want. And if you say no, they feel extremely offended. But you feel offended that they're force feeding you. So whose offendedness is more? It's not. It's the people who's pushing that usually gets their way. So now, how about changing that? And one of the reasons why you wouldn't do that is because you would say, well, I don't mind. or I will adjust. And this is one of the fake news messages that sometimes comes, and they tell you, oh, you have to adjust to this person and that person and the other person. And in that way, you allow them to mess you around. Is that right? So we have this word maryadas. And generally speaking, in BK, the word maryadas is translated as codes of conduct. But this word Maryada is there especially in the Ramayana, and it is boundaries. So, for example, between California and Mexico, I think there's some sort of a wall. There's a boundary. You cannot cross. And this is Maryada. And so this determination has to do with making it clear that this is my boundary, you cannot cross. And other person will say, you know what, I'm going to cross anyway. And so it's a tussle. And you even have it with yourself, you'll promise yourself that I will, go to bed early enough to get up for Amrit Vela without feeling tired, right? But you don't. Or, I will definitely arrive in class before the class starts. You don't. And so it a little bit is to do with self-discipline. And one of the things that we learn, sometimes people have been asking me about teacher training and all this type of thing. So one of the things you learn when you learn to be a BK teacher or student, doesn't matter, but discipline. And discipline of the self is really quite a good thing to have, because a person who is self-disciplined is reliable, and you know where you are with them, and it's connected with will. One of the things Baba says about will is if you will everything to him, he will give you willpower in exchange. This is a very interesting thing, interesting part of our contract with Baba, because we do have a contract with him. And sometimes he talks about guarantees. He says, I will guarantee that if you remember me, I guarantee that your sins will be finished off. And it's contingent on us. He will fulfill his side of the bargain. He doesn't have any willpower problem. He doesn't have any karmic accounts. He doesn't have any of these human problems because he's not a human. So you're a human with all the human frailties, and you want to get into a relationship with a non-human who doesn't have any human frailties. He will hold up his side of the contract. And so if the contract is not fulfilled, it's not from his side, it's from our side. And of course, there are consequences. And so, therefore, in all of this, we have to bring in the idea of priority. What is my priority? And this is connected with values. And in BK, we talk a lot about values, right? And because values is very fashionable, everything you can think of is a value, whether it is or not. It's under that classification. So one day, someone asked me to do a lecture on the value of courage. I said, excuse me, that's not a value. It's not? Value is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That value. And so there's a difference between your values and your virtues. They are not interchangeable. They're not synonymous. Value is this has higher value than this, and that has higher value than that. And so it's about priorities. So if we're going to say destined to make it as an affirmation, we talked earlier about affirming the self. So this is also an affirmation. And also it is something like using the blessings that he gives us, because he says, I give you tons of blessings, but if you don't use them, they don't work. And so just having blessings from God doesn't do the job. You have to use them so that they get activated. It's like somebody gives you a packet full of seeds, but if you don't plant them, there's no use. So the blessings he gives us, or the knowledge he gives us, is really like seeds. And we have to plant them. We have to give them water and sunshine and take the weeds out and watch out for the bugs and all of that, so that our blessings will turn into real big fortune, And so this is one of them, destined to make it or succeed. So one of the things he says about that is success is your godfatherly birthright, right? You know this expression? And so you have to think, okay, if my birthright is to succeed, and that's from his side, he says, okay, this is what I'm going to do from my side. I'm going to give you everything you need to succeed. You have absolutely no reason whatsoever to not succeed from my side. But then from your side, that's up to you. So that means that, this guarantees that he gives us is absolutely contingent on us doing our side of the contract. So this is why the priorities is important, because we have to prioritize. There's a ton of things that we have to do every day. And when we make decisions, the decisions we make are based upon the different circumstances and what's in front of us. And we will decide things on the basis of our priorities. And so sometimes you'll hear the expression, get your priorities straight. And so this is actually an exercise that you can do, and really give yourself this exercise to prioritize what is important for you. And of course, that has something to do with your sense of identity. And sometimes we say, okay, my identity is what? I am a BK, yes or no? Because in a way, a BK means you're all dressed up the right way with the right badge on the right side of you, and you do all those right things. And then you can be photographed, and that's a BK. But that's physical, But if you say, I'm a Raj Yogi, that's more to do with what you do. And what you do is Raj Yoga. So that's how come you're a Raj Yogi. You don't have to do anything to be a BK. You just say, I'm a BK, and dress up like one. But in France, there's a very interesting expression. They say, l'habit ne fait pas le moine, which means that you can be dressed up as a monk, but it doesn't mean you're a monk. You see, or you can be dressed up as anything, but you could be a monk. So your external look doesn't prove or disprove anything. But yet people are very focused on looks. And there's even an illness called looking good syndrome. And, then you're very concerned that you have to look good and that other people also have to look good. And if they don't look good, they're unacceptable. But this is body consciousness, of course. Yeah. So being a Raj yogi means that you're studying the knowledge of Raj Yoga. That's a priority for you. You are practicing meditation, and while you are doing this and that, you're checking, am I soul conscious? Is my vibration spiritual? And all these things. Your attention is on being a Raj yogi. And being a BK, you don't have to have that attention, actually. Just have to dress up a certain way. And of course, actually, it means a lot to be a child of Brahma. So you are, you have this expression, Brahmachari, or Brahmacharya. So Brahmacharya is a celibacy, but Brahmacharya means to follow Brahma. And so your chalan, your behavior, is according to the like the culture of Brahma. And so we have this, excuse me, this concept which Baba came up with one year, quite some years ago, and he talked about Brahmin culture. And he talked about Brahmin culture because we have a lot of different cultures. There's people from all different regions of India, all different races and religions and parts of this world and that world. And especially in the United States, it's very mixed cultures. And so in the United States, there is this idea of being an American, which is a very mysterious thing. What is an American, right? How do you be an American? So you have to like baseball and McDonald's and things like that. It's very American. And then you have the un-American people. So there's this idea that is there. And you can also think about in your sense of identity as a Brahmin, as a Raj yogi, as a person who follows in the footsteps of Brahma. And in that way, you're building yourself, you see. And so then we have to ask ourselves, what is this destination? And Baba uses the word Sadgati, right? I am the bestower of Sadgati, which is generally translated as salvation. But if you break down the word, it means that you arrive at the right place. So that means you have to have your GPS, which is set to a destination, and you go there. And then the matter of, do you deviate from the route that is put there in your BK GPS? And there are many deviations that we do with the word because. I can't do this because of that. I didn't come to class because. I came late because. Lots and lots of because is there. So, okay. Because in BK, we're on a pilgrimage. And so we want to arrive somewhere. And he tells these two destinations. One is called Gati and one is called Sadgati. So Gati means you arrive at the soul world. And then we don't stay there very long because there's no time there anyway. We go right away to the golden age, which is called Sadgati. So where we want to arrive is we want to have our next birth in the golden age. So our destination is defined by aspects to do with being Satu Pradhan, right? And then he talks about different descriptions of where you have to go. And so one interesting thing is you have your original stage, your final stage, and your perfect stage, these three. You remember these? So your original stage is that you arrived here in a good condition. Your final stage is you leave here in good condition. And your perfect stage, maybe we can say your original stage is how you are in the soul world. And your perfect stage is you arrive in the golden age. And your final stage is you leave the confluence age. And all these three are the same. Your original, your final, and your perfect. And they're all Sato Pradhan. So this is where we're going. So if we say, I am destined to make it, what it means, practically speaking, is that we are planning to and committed to achieve this goal, which Baba has laid out in front of us and said, I'm giving you everything you need to get there. Whether you came in the beginning of BK or in the end of BK doesn't make any difference. You still have what you need to get there. So some people say, oh, I don't think I can make it because I came late. And Baba says, okay, that goes into the waste paper basket called excuses. So when you're checking your priorities and everything, it might be good to have a little trash can called excuses, so that if you discover an excuse, you put it in the trash because it's not valid. There's an expression that Baba says, Karan and Nivaran, right? All these reasons why you find a solution to these reasons. And the solution is there, but we need to identify it. So this is a process of really thinking through what we have to do to actually succeed. Determined thought, and then there's also this thing called intention. Even though they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You know that one? Oh, yeah, I wanted to, but I didn't. Oh, I knew I should, but I didn't. So all of these things can go in the category of not really having enough will. Now, you've heard this expression, political will. Political will, people say, okay, we should, sort out the environmental problem, but there isn't the political will to do it. That means it's not considered important enough, or you don't want to make any sacrifices for it because you don't care. So not caring about the self is not a good idea. Sometimes, there's a lot of people around who will say, you should be humble. Have you heard that? You need to be humble. And then they'll give you a string of expressions about how you need to be humble in this way, that way, and the other way. What they're really doing is trying to get rid of you as a competitor. So don't buy into that. Because that's fake news. There's one more of those messages. And it's also part of this toxic conventional morality, where you will accuse somebody of being arrogant. And the thing with BKs is that you want to be free from greed, anger, attachment, lust, and ego. Now, these words are a little bit problematic because they're not specific enough. And so I would prefer to change the word anger into the word violence, because if you feel anger, it's a reality. You feel angry. It's not a vice. What you do with it is either a vice or not a vice, but itself is not a vice. Right? So we have to be very precise about these things. Otherwise, we will not be able to reach our destination, I think. So then greed, taking care of yourself is not greed. But anyone can accuse you of greed and make you feel guilty. This is called manipulation. And you shouldn't really be up for that manipulation. And then lust, oh, I saw you, looking at somebody. You don't know what's going on in my mind. Get off. What is this? That's not okay. Oh, you're attached. It's always like a piece of accusation. You see what I mean? And actually, that's not okay to do that, because the contract is between you and God, and there is no police force involved in this. But there's a ton of BKs who like to police each other. That's not part of the deal. So it's between me and my conscience and God. No one is my judge, and God is my judge. Is that okay? If you were 5 years old, maybe it's different, but I don't see any 5-year-olds here in this room. So we cannot allow ourselves to be put into a mentality as a child is put into a certain mentality, because everyone was put in that mentality when they were children, but doesn't mean you have to go, sweet children, therefore I'm 2 years old. No, that's not the right way. And bache is not children. Bache is sons. Sons. Is it not? Bache is sons. Baba says you are all brothers. I'm the father. That makes us sons, not 2-year-old little babies. Excuse me. No. So you can see if you are emotionally dependent on someone and that you can't live without them. That's attachment. But it's not for someone else to accuse you. And if somebody accuses you, you have to get your replies ready. Have you got a bunch of replies for when people say, oh, you should be humble? What are you going to say? Because if you don't have your answers ready, they get away with it. If you have your answers ready, then you are sitting on your seat of self-respect. And sometimes your answer can be just a look. That will do. You could do a lot with a look, just to affirm that I have a contract with God, you have a contract with God, I don't have any contract with you. Mind your own business. I need to do that, because otherwise you're allowing other people to diminish you. And it's absolutely unnecessary, you know, because we are responsible for the results of our studies, not some other BKs. Am I right? Or you can't say, oh, sorry, Baba, I failed the exam because this next guy was in my way. He'll say, huh? Get him out of your way. What's your problem? You know? So being a Raj Yogi, being a Brahmin is not a public statement. It's private. And it's between you and yourself, between you and God. And in your relationships with people, in interaction with people, they don't need to know what is your destination. You know, when you're driving along on the freeway, you don't ask the next people in the next cars, where are you going? No, you go where you're going, they go where they're going. It's none of your business. And where you're going is none of their business. So we need to make sure that my destination is my business. Now, your destination is up to you. If you want to go same place as me, that's nice, but it's still, you know. And so in many ways, we are doing this, you're on your own. But it's better psychologically, socially, to be with others on the journey, because the human beings do better in company. And Sahaj Raj Yoga means that you're doing it in the context of karmic accounts, other people who have all different kinds of personalities. And it is so that you can stay on your own track in a context of interference. I see. So just because there's interference doesn't mean you get interfered with. And then you also have to make sure that you do not interfere with anyone else. Because everyone is going to arrive at the destination dictated by their karma, not by another BK. You see? So this is a very important ingredient in I'm destined to make it, because it's a statement of focus. And Baba talks about Buddhi Yoga, focus of attention. So your focus of attention is, he says, remember Baba and remember the kingdom, and pay attention on your status. And then somebody will say, oh, you're too arrogant because you're worried about your status. Say, have a nice day. Go jump in the lake. None of your business. My status is between me and God. You keep your comments to yourself. You have to be able to affirm and assert these boundaries. And that's just that, which they may not like. So you have to get answers that are witty and have a full stop at the end of it, and do not give opportunity for reply. And it's a statement of, that's my position. Have a nice day. Have a nice day is a nice way of saying something that I used to tell people, but yeah, something like that. Get lost. Go to hell. But then you come back to yourself and face yourself And now there are some people who do this practice in such a way that they will burn out. And then if you are driving a car like that, you will not reach your destination. So it's also a very good idea to understand the difference between optimum and maximum. And optimum is very good because you can keep going indefinitely at optimum. And then there's another thing called the law of diminishing returns. Do you know about that? It's like this, that you make a certain effort, and the more you make effort, the more you get improved results up to a certain point. And when you reach that point, you make more effort, less benefit. So that's called the law of diminishing returns. So you don't cross that point where the result of your effort is less, increasingly less than the increased amount of effort that you make. And so that's a way of finding what's the optimum. And if you do this practice with the regularity that Baba's talking about, it means you will arrive at your destination. So in traffic, they did experiments that who gets there quicker, the one who stays in a particular lane on the freeway or the one who does lane jumping? What do you think the result is? It's the same. You stay in the same lane or you do lane jumping, you arrive there at the same time. But when you do lane jumping, you get exhausted. Sure, exactly. And so therefore, in arriving at the destination, we have to have a certain amount of patience. And Daddy Yankee used to very often talk about the importance of patience. We have to be patient with ourselves. We have to be patient with the circumstances. We have to be patient with the other people. And we will arrive, you see. And you know that there is this story of the hare and the tortoise, right? And who won? The tortoise. So if you are a BK plodder, that's actually quite good. You just get on with your job and you arrive where you arrive. So you need to make sure that you create a rhythm in your life which is sustainable. And there are many things which are calculated to wreck that. And if you're like really good, then Maya will come along with something really better. And that's just the way it is. And so sometimes you have to recover from these slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, as they say. So that means sometimes he talks about this as a war. So sometimes you get ambushed and shot down from a drone or whatever. And then, you have to get back on track. That's okay. Nothing wrong. Everything is allowed. But don't give up. That's important. Because sometimes you think you will sometimes compare yourself with somebody else. And you will say, oh, this one is better than me, that one is better than me. And so therefore I can't make it. This is called faulty logic. And many, many BKs have a wonderful time using faulty logic to make sure that they do not succeed. And this is a deep mystery. We do not know why people do that. You can tell them 5 million times, do not use this faulty logic. They'll use it anyway. you know. And part of it is because of not permitting oneself to believe in oneself. So you can ask yourself, do I give myself permission to believe in myself? Because if you believe in yourself, somebody might say you're arrogant and you better be humble. Definitely they will, but so what? That's public opinion. And one thing that's very important to be clear about is public opinion is absolutely unreliable. So any comment anybody makes about you goes in the category of public opinion. Why are you giving credibility to something that is by definition unreliable? That includes your family members, because it's calculated to make you give up. It's not necessary to buy into it. Absolutely not necessary. If God himself says you are wonderful, marvelous, and fantastic, and everybody else says you are no good and horrible, who are you going to believe? Who? You rather believe the person who wants to put you down than the one who's encouraging you. And this is just a residual effect of, what I call toxic conventional morality and all that stuff. So then you also have to have standards. And you decide on your own standards. And the thing about standards is they will shift as time goes by. So when you start off in BK, you have a standard which is pretty much doable. And then after some time, you increase your strength and your clarity and everything. And then you say, you know what, these standards of mine, actually, I really higher standard. So you will hold yourself to account in a little higher way. Because the process of going from Tamo Pradhan to Sato Pradhan must involve a progression of shifting of standards, because your condition actually changes. And something that was okay up until today is all of a sudden not okay anymore. And when you get that moment of looking at yourself and thinking, all these things that I think is okay, I don't think they're okay anymore. And then you just shift to another level, you see. And it's very suitable to do it like that, because you can't start off your education doing a PhD. You had to go to kindergarten, then you go to middle school and high school and college and so on and so forth. And as you go through, your standards change. And also your capacity changes. So we have to understand that we're in this progression, which is taking us through all sorts of different levels and different degrees and many, many different things. And when you're going along the path of Raj Yoga, it's not like a freeway. Sometimes it's comparable to what people do in the pilgrimages in India, where they go to a temple which is high in the Himalayas, right? And so you want to go there, go up and down, and it's going to rain and sun and cold and hot and all of this, and you just keep going. And all the time you're overall going higher and higher, but sometimes the path is going down, sometimes it's plateau, sometimes you get blocked. You experience this in your BK life, you get blocked. You just can't move forward. So that's when you kind of reach a big vertical cliff, and you have to go up, and then you can go along a bit. And so that means it's a good time to really reevaluate yourself, give yourself the 7-day course again, and define who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it and so on. And it gets you to just go up, and then you're on the other level and you can go along there for a while. So the path is not like that. It's all over the place. But overall, between where you start and where you finish, you get there, regardless of all the ups and downs. And if you fall down a crevasse or whatever, or you get shot down, or you fall unconscious or whatever, you wake up again and carry on. Or you break all your bones, you fix them up and keep going. Because he uses this expression, look, there's only one shop. That means this is it. And you just tell yourself, whatever it is, I will get there. And so make yourself immortal in the sense of whatever happens, you bounce back. And even if you get it all wrong for a long time, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I had it all wrong, that's okay. What's wrong with that? Now you got it right. You do that. So there's nothing to regret. And I liked very much this expression that Baba gave in the Murlis of last week or the week before or something, that all the sins you do are predestined in drama. So that's that. And you will have to pay for them. So, okay. And you're free to not do them. But not exactly, because they're predestined in drama. So it's a very, very interesting paradox. And the purpose of this paradox is to get you to understand the message that let go and get on with it. Whatever you did, however bad it was, so what? Because if you keep thinking, oh, I shouldn't have done this, and I shouldn't have done that, and I'm bad BK and blah, 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 you can't move a single step forward by thinking like that, you see. But some people, they've had too much religion, which makes you feel too much guilty about anything and everything. And so that's in the way. And so from that angle, it's quite good to stop being religious. Because mea culpa, I am bad and this and that. And no. Then the other thing which is really interesting is, he says, you are selected. Right? And did you find God or did God find you? God found us, right? And he's not stupid. Sometimes you say, why me, right? Why me? And, but even when you say, why me, you say, well, anyway, it's me, warts and all. And so, we have to tell ourselves the reality. You were a deity. You are a deity soul. You passed through 84 births, none of which was an evolution from the last one. Every single one is going down. At no point in time do you get better. You're all the time getting worse. And so this is as bad as it gets. There is nothing worse than what we are at the moment. It's not that bad. So from now on, everything is up, you see. And he said, unless you hit bottom, you will not think about me. So did you hit bottom? Yes. Okay. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Now we're going up and evolving and metamorphosing. So I don't know if you've ever thought about finding a chrysalis and cutting it open with a razor blade and seeing if it's half butterfly and half caterpillar. Did you ever think about that? No. Well, if you would do that, what would you find? What happens in a chrysalis? So the caterpillar totally melts and becomes some horrible goo, right? And then it becomes a butterfly really suddenly. And so we are in the chrysalis stage. So if you look at yourself and you find that you're a kind of a horrible goo, you're on the right track. And just know that it will happen. You will become the butterfly. And as soon as you're the butterfly, you have to come out of the cocoon, of course. And this is why he says, when you become karmatit, you will die. Everybody wants to be karmatit. Nobody wants to die. It's a bit strange, right? But actually, he said, you want me to take you to the soul world? You are invoking your death. So a lot of this is preparation for death. And the main kind of death that we have to have is the ego death. And ego death is probably as bad as actual death. And you remember the famous last words of Brahma Baba, incorporeal, viceless, and egoless. So all of this practice of soul consciousness is all about, saying to the drama and to Baba, is there anyone out there who like to crush my ego? You'll find quite a few people who will say, oh yeah, I can do that for you. You see? Because it's unlikely that you will crush your own ego. But there are quite a few people absolutely, totally ready to oblige. And even if you don't ask them, they'll oblige anyway. And so since it is a matter of becoming egoless, if somebody else will do it for you, that's quite convenient, no? So take advantage if somebody wants to do your job for you. Because remember, you're immortal. So they may be able to destroy your ego, which is what you want anyway, but they won't be able to destroy you. So very often he talks about, oh, you've got to break your ego. You won't break your ego. You can't even see your ego. Can you see your ego? You can see somebody else's ego. And they can see your ego. So if they can see your ego and they come along and break it for you, you can reciprocate and break theirs also. So, mutually beneficial karma. But then we get where we're trying to reach. Egoless, viceless, bodiless, But this takes courage, because it's a kind of suicide. So sometimes people say suicide is a cowardly act, but this kind of suicide is a very courageous act. And in religion, sometimes they do these ritual suicides. Like in Japan, you do the harakiri and this kind of thing. Take a lot of courage. Actually, most of the things that we have to do takes a lot of courage, because you're flying in the face of opposition at every step. Opposition, people trying to take you out, take you down, make you feel bad, this, that, and the other. And, all of this, when you look at it from the angle that he's telling us to look at, it's really quite advantageous. And when you see the advantage, it's much easier to take a step of courage. Because it's interesting that there's this expression, take a step of courage. It's a decision. And so when you see from the eye of soul consciousness and the eye of your intention to arrive at the destination, that this and this and this is what you have to do, and you realize how difficult it is, because, I've got to face this and I've got to risk that. So it takes courage. And so you need to also give yourself time to work up to that step of courage and then take the step. And this is called overcoming fear. Because fear, it's in the list of vices, right? But it's not a vice. Fear is not a vice at all. Fear is data, is a given. You will come upon something which makes you afraid, and then you can do different things in the face of fear. Basically, two options. I told you earlier about the fight, flight, or freeze type. And those are, for me, all in the department of not facing your fear. Facing your fear is this step of courage where you just, walk through that big tiger's mouth knowing it's a paper tiger, even though it looks jolly real. And, really telling yourself, Baba is with me, jump, do it. And then you do it and you find you're still alive at the end of it. You say, made it. You see. So this is this this thing that we're doing. And if you really tell yourself, this is my destiny, this is my identity, I will make it. This is fixed and it's my decision. And if I fall apart on the way, it doesn't matter. I'll pull myself together again. So what? Always remember this thing. So what? Oh, you're so what? Get out of my way and move there. So I will stop there and see if we have any questions from our... I hear you. Yeah.
There's some comments and questions. So I'm going to read the question to you. Sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. Not others, but we have some scars of putting ourselves down more than others do. How to get out of that?
The thing is this, where did those so-called sanskaras, I wouldn't call them sanskaras, I would call them messages. messages that you have been hearing your whole life. It's not normal, it's not natural for a person to put themselves down. They have to be trained to put themselves down. It doesn't happen by itself. And because you are trained to put yourself down from infancy onwards, you forget that somebody told you that. And it's you internalize the voice of an external source who put you down, because you cannot put yourself down without being trained to do that. But you forget who did it to you. And so you need to go back and back and back to find out where these messages came from, and to acknowledge that they came from a respectable source who gave you fake news because of some moral code that's not valid. It is what it is, but wake up. And putting yourself down is as difficult to overcome as any other addiction. And one of the definitions of an addiction is an allergy. Quite interesting. So when you are taught to be less than what you are, definitely you'd be allergic to that. But this also becomes an addiction. So you take it on, you take it in, and you can't get out of it. So this is absolutely indistinguishable from addiction to heroin or cocaine or whatever the thing is. There's no difference. And so to get out of it, you have to do what an addict has to do to get out of their addiction. So there are ways to get out of putting yourself down. There are moments in your spiritual practice where you will experience a glimpse of what it is like to be me. You'll experience that you are actually a pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful, blissful soul, even for a second. Because this happens. Everybody gets this gift from Baba. But the thing is, that's a glimpse, and you've had this other toxic message for your whole life. And so what you need to do is really work deep and find the source of the toxic message. And you have to repair yourself, bring yourself back to who you are. And there's lots and lots of different ways. But if you do this BK practice diligently in an optimal way, and also you pay attention to doing pure karma, because when you do pure karma, it's quite tangible. And you start to get an effect of that, which builds you up, you see. And so your yoga, your study, and your pure karma, keep doing. And choose people who don't put you down, but recognize that you will be drawn towards people who do put you down. And then you have to be very conscious that you have a tendency to seek out people who will put you down. And you must notice it and then take a risk of being with people who value you and understand your importance. And, you know, this is called good company. And slowly, but also doing this kind of deeper spiritual work puts you face to face with this problem. and also makes it clear to you that it's not from you. It's from outside that was put on you. It's nothing to do with you. It's just circumstantial. And once you get that it's nothing to do with you, it becomes more rapid to come out of it, I see. And also, the more you meditate, the more you're taking in strength. And there's a kind of reflects, Baba keeps reflecting you back to yourself so that you can see, I am not what was projected onto me. And then you can drop it slowly. It might take you 50 years, but that's okay. It's okay because you get there. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Just keep going. I can't hear. Same as last cycle. Don't tell yourself that because that might make you depressed. So I would just say, no, I'm going to make it. I am going to make it. I am destined to make it. And that's that. End of story, period. I will make it. There's a firm, determined thought, you see. That's like you make it. This is what it is. And that's that. Anybody doesn't like it, too bad. Out of my way. Assert. You have to assert yourself. And nobody will tell you in BKs to assert yourself, but you actually do have to assert yourself. Start with affirming and gradually assert. Doesn't mean that you're pushy. There are pushy people, no doubt, but it's not the same as affirming yourself and asserting yourself. You have a right.
What is enlightened self-interest? Could you elaborate?
What is enlightened self-interest? I used to talk about that, so you must have been hearing that. But enlightened self-interest is like this. You affirm yourself and you assert yourself. It doesn't mean that you're selfish. There is people who will say you're selfish and you need to be humble. It's just people trying to prevent you from asserting yourself and affirming yourself, because then you're competitive. This is a very competitive practice, And they all say, don't compete. That means don't compete against me. Because I want to go ahead of you and I want you to just sit down and be quiet and don't compete. But no, this is a race. You move forward. And, if you're selfish, you will do something that is to the detriment of someone so that you get an advantage or an unfair advantage. And if you are having enlightened self-interest, there is one expression in Hindi that Baba sometimes mentions, and Sukanyaban has just come in, so she will get me the right expression. What is it? Tere bane sabka bala, something like that. Tere bane sabka bala. That means when you move forward, everybody else moves forward. So just move forward, because it's not going to stop anybody else moving forward. We bring everything to a higher level. Do you want to do your practice in a higher level than what you're doing? Do you want that? No? Yes? Yes, right? So if somebody starts going ahead, what will you do? You will also go ahead, no? So that is enlightened self-interest, something like that.
Shanti, could you give us an example of someone crushing someone else's ego?
Well, Daddy Yankee was a master ego crusher. Master. And she would find, exactly where your weak point is, which is invisible to everybody else, and she'll stick it to you and see if you can get through that. Because she can see what your ego is, and so that's the contract. And my contract with her was like that. I would say, you do whatever you want to me, I will make it. So she took it up. But no, a person with a good third eye, you can see what everybody's problem is, you see, and then you pop the balloon. Because ego is called false ego. So if somebody is not real, pretend, it's visible, right? And so even circumstances you may not want to do it, but circumstances will make you do it. And then, oops, pop somebody's balloon. And they'll say, but, and even you have to have actually courage to pop someone's ego, because they will react. They won't like it. But the aim of this is to become free from ego. And it's a reality that you will not pop your own ego. You can't see it. Other people will see it, and they will do whatever they do to break it. When you do heavy duty interpersonal work, you can get a glimpse of it. But it's like only for a moment. Just as you can only for a moment see the reality of you, and then it fades away. Same way, only for a moment you see your ego and it fades away. So when you get it, you have to commit it to memory so you know. And then you kind of go back to normal, right? Most of the time we're normal. And occasionally we're really clear. But you can't, it's a peak. So you don't stay on the peak. You're in the normal stage most of the time.
Thanks. Yeah, that's okay. But I was thinking more on the how do I know someone is crushing my ego?
You'll know. You'll know.
Yeah, but I mean, it hurts, I guess.
Well, yes. Yeah. It hurts very badly because you lose face.
Oh, I see.
Losing face. I mean, who wants that? Most people, it's a good reason to suicide if you lose face. It's expected in some cultures if you lose face, because your game will be exposed.
Okay.
That's not nice to have that happen, but it's our contract. Oh God, let me be ego free. Oh, okay, let me arrange something.
So I don't know what Dennis Ben will say, but I do know that we shouldn't listen to the voice of self-doubt, which is the ego. Instead, we should listen to how Baba sees us by pulling out points of self-respect and spiritual intoxication from that day's Murli, and develop faith that how Baba sees me is who I really am, and tell the ego to be quiet and get out. Why me? But why not me? Somebody has to be the chosen one. So why not me? I think it's more of a comment.
Yeah, but that's not a real question, because I'll tell you why. It's a fake question. Because the person isn't really asking from their self. They're asking from their ego, or they have a question, but they don't really want to ask it. So my answer would be, what's really your question? Because it's like a little bit faulty logic, and it's a little bit theoretical. But what I sense is behind that question, there's another question, which is really what he or she wants to ask. But it might be a bit difficult to ask it, because when you ask a question that's really your question, you expose yourself. And so one doesn't want to do that. But, you know, whenever you say, yeah, I should do this and I shouldn't do that, it's like, I know. But behind that, it's like you can sense it's something that's blocking the person, something that's in the way, and maybe the person doesn't have quite the words for it. But there is something there that's like pain in the soul. And, you know, if you really have the deep doubt in the self, that's a very painful experience. And it's a real experience. And you can't overcome it by theoretical points of gyan. So it's a wound in the soul. And so to become free from it, you have to really go into the pain and re-feel it. And where that pain came from would be ancient pain. And where you are now is not the same place as where you were at that time when you experienced that pain. So your capacity to handle that pain now is much, much greater than your capacity to handle it at the time when it was inflicted on you. Which means that you can actually risk to re-feel that pain and go get through it. Because when you get through your pain, it's like an accomplishment. And it no longer has the ability to control you, to destroy you, to stop you from being who you are. So that's what I'm sensing behind that question.
Sister Denise, please explain simply how you got into Gyan and what brought you closer to Baba. And Gyan, it's like general, how you got into Gyan.
Well, you know, I got hit over the head with a large ball of fire, and that was the end of the story. I had no choice. Mostly everybody had no choice, right? Did you have any choice? Baba comes along, you here, sit here and study. Okay. That's how it is, you know. How did you get into Gyan? No idea, you know. How did this happen? How did I get here?
It's a nice, simple answer.
Yes.
So the question is there a divine order when Baba says become incorporeal, egoless, and viceless?
You know, incorporeal, egoless, and viceless are synonyms. It's all the same. You don't first become incorporeal, then viceless, then egoless. It's not like that. They're all three words for the same thing.
So my question is, since this is the end of the confluence age, and we we don't expect our instrument souls to be as pure as Baba and Mama. So how do you handle situations when such souls takes actions in influence of such devices or like ego or anger? How do you just politely say to them that just mind your own business? Or
Yeah, right. You have to be in your swaman, and that takes time, because the self is messed up by 84 births worth of, or 63 births worth of drama, karma, da, all that stuff. And so here you are in this drama scene where some people interact with you in such a way that you don't know how to be in your power or whatever. It will activate your ego, you see. And then you have an ego reaction, could be superiority or inferiority or fight or flight or freeze or any kind of thing which somebody activates in you, and you get very frustrated with it, right? Because you don't seem to have the right arrangement for winning the point in the tennis match, yeah? And so you have to again, go back to square one. And really, like I was mentioning with the other person who asked the question of, which I said was a hypothetical question, because it's normal to put a question in such a way that you don't want the person to know what's going on, because it exposes the ego. And the ego is a like a mask, and it's for the purpose of protecting the wounded soul. And some people have very amazing, fabulous masks, which is all really very good. And some people don't have very good masks, and so it never works out very well. But either way, it's a mask. And behind that, there is the real, pure, beautiful self.